Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Georgia Child Support Commission Technology and Calculator Subcommittee meeting. We've got a lot of ground to cover today. I'm Regina Quick. I chair this subcommittee, and we will perhaps have some other members popping on to the meeting shortly. I will just go ahead and say that the last formal meeting that we had, was December 16th, 2022. So we've not had a meeting in quite some time. We did, of course, review and approve the minutes of the last meeting via e-vote after that meeting. But since then, of course, Child Support Commission was working on the proposed legislation for this upcoming and now concluded, mercifully, in some folks' view, mercifully concluded legislative session and some other matters. So we will have some things to discuss that will be done in connection with that legislation and otherwise. But right now, at least, Latana, if you will just go over generally the rules of the meeting and explain how we will conduct business in this hybrid meeting. We're here in person at the State Bar, and we've got others of our members of the public on Zoom.
Thank you, Regina, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Latana Lawrence, and I am the program coordinator for it's on the screen, Georgia Child Support Commission. I will briefly discuss a few rules to help us navigate the meeting today via Zoom webinar. The Technology and Calculator Subcommittee members and staff are designated as panelists within Zoom and can speak at any time during this meeting. All other participants are designated as attendees and are muted during the meeting, but may type a message in the Zoom chat feature if needed. The Child Support Commission does not hear public comment during any of its subcommittee meetings. Accordingly, we will not be accepting public comments today. However, you may leave a written comment for the commission at any time through the commission's website. And for your convenience, I will place that address in the Zoom chat momentarily. Also, anyone wishing to give public comment by speaking may do so at any full Child Support Commission meeting. The next one will be held on April 19th. In conclusion of today's meeting, staff will post a recording on our YouTube channel, Georgia Child Support Commission. And I will also place the YouTube channel in the chat for everyone momentarily. Thank you, and I will turn it over to Noelle.
Thank you, Latana, and I'm happy to confirm that we do have a quorum of 4 of our 7 committee members.
Excellent. Well, that is good news indeed. Well, I would be remiss if in our introductions and our housekeeping, I didn't note that Kurt Bryan is here, and for those of you that haven't met him yet, he has replaced, although she may, in many respects, feel irreplaceable to those of us that have been working with the child support guidelines since 2006. Elaine Johnson has retired, and so Kurt is taking over that role and has jumped in with both feet after a transition period with Elaine, but yes. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we've got some old business we've got to take care of. Just going right through the agenda as best we can. There's some things that happen every year that we'll just review very quickly. Of course, every year, the self-employment taxes paid formula has to be revised and updated. And staff has worked with the Administrative Office of the Courts and the Judicial Council developers to implement that annual formula change for self-employment taxes paid on Schedule B of the calculator. This update comes from the Social Security Administration, just for everybody's information in terms of what gets embedded in and implemented in the calculator. For the year 2024, the annual earnings-based limit has been set by the federal government at $168,600, and the old age survivors and disability insurance tax rate remains set at 6.2%. So that, of course, is done automatically, and it is done by law. So the other old business, you all may recall, we had a lengthy substantive discussion at the last meeting about pre-existing orders, and just in terms of how they work and how they show up and issues that people have with the pre-existing order when it comes up. And staff was charged with working with developers to try to improve instructions. We didn't take any other action on the pre-existing order issue, but we did task staff to work to try to improve the instructions for the pre-existing order process on Schedule B in the child support calculator. Staff has worked on those instruction changes in the interim, and I think Kurt is going to speak to what's been happening. Sure. And what the proposal and the recommendation is from staff, with an assist from LaTonna on the technology as we go through the PowerPoint. So Kurt, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Regina. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. And if you could go to the next slide, LaTonna. So as y'all may be aware, this is our existing screen on Schedule B for adding a pre-existing child support order that's being paid for another child. This is what the screen currently looks like, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to give a couple of different options of kind of ways that we could go. Both options are very similar, but one's a little bit more streamlined and one's a little bit more little bit more in depth as to what the instructions are. But we'll show you what those options will look like. And if you'll go to the next slide. Now, this is version A, and both of these options will include what we're calling a radio button that users will essentially attest to before they're able to click on that box 43A in order to add that pre-existing order. And slide 3. So yes.
Okay, it keeps jumping.
You can just ignore that.
It's literally jumping.
Instead of the
That's
slide.
fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
That's all right. So this is what we're calling version A. It would essentially replace that first text box, and it'll still have the same text of enter information on the pre-existing orders, the children included in those orders, and the average monthly child support actually paid, excluding arrears payments. But the new text highlighted in yellow would be acknowledge that you understand the requirements of a pre-existing child support order by reviewing and clicking the following radio button. And it's got a new set of text there, and that's of course derived from 19615 A18 regarding the requirements of a pre-existing order. And it's listing those 3 main requirements. So what would happen is users would click that radio button, and by clicking that, they would then be able to select 43A, which would, of course, open up the new text box or the new tab. And if you want to go to the next slide, LaTonna. And that would largely look the same as it is now, with one difference. The text currently reads a pre-existing order is a child support order in another case, but we would be adding another / different case to kind of make that distinction that it's not the case that you're currently entering data for. It's a different case altogether. So that would be version A. And version B is largely kind of the same thing, only it's a little bit more streamlined with some of the text taken out. The new text would simply read, acknowledge that you understand the requirements of a pre-existing child support order by reviewing and clicking the following radio button. And again, it's the same text derived from 19615, but it bullet points each of them, and users still have to click that radio button in order to move forward. And it would then bring up a new window. And we went ahead just to give another option to kind of make it look a little bit cleaner, maybe streamline it a bit. We didn't want to be repetitive, saying the exact same thing on 43A when the new window opens up. So users would then just enter the court name, civil action number, and so forth, and then save it, and then go on with their calculator ways. So, we have kind of version A, which is kind of the more in-depth version, and then version B, which is, what I'm calling the simplified version. So wanted to get y'all's thoughts on where we're at with that.
All right, thank you, Kurt. And can we take that off screen so that I can maybe see my committee members, my subcommittee members? So what is the pleasure of the subcommittee in terms of where we are on that? I know it was a while back, but I suspect given the amount of time we spent, which seemed like about 45 minutes plus, discussing all the issues associated with the pre-existing order, it's probably something y'all have encountered even since then in one form or fashion. But what's the pleasure first of all, what's the pleasure as to whether or not we do want to move forward with a recommendation to the full commission that a change be made to the calculator, an improvement be made to the calculator to make it more clear?
I think that moving ahead with that is a good idea. I preferred the simplified version. One thing that I would say is on that screen, the second screen after the initial thing comes up, I think it would be helpful to say date of initial pre-existing order, just so it's clear, because everything else on that is referred to as pre-existing. But I think it does make it more clear, but I thought B was better than A.
Can I just clarify? So you're saying where it says date of initial order, you're saying make that date of pre-existing order.
I like that.
I like that.
Anyone else have any comment about either the concept or either of the options? No. Okay. Well, then I will entertain first of all, I guess I will entertain a motion as to whether or not Schedule B should be improved.
I'll move that it be improved.
I'll second. Do I have a second? All right, motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All right, we will recommend an improvement. And does anyone care to make a motion as to one of these options with Judge Bolden's suggested change?
I would make the motion with that change. I agree that was
as to option B then, Jackie?
Yes.
All right, now, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, that's unanimous, and we will make that recommendation on April the 19th with a presentation to the full commission. And thanks to staff for all that. I know I had a couple of conversations along the way with everybody as it was progressing since our last meeting. So I think it's an improvement, and I hope the Superior Court judges and the juvenile court judges feel likewise in terms of not inviting them to what could be an error. I think it's clear to everyone, I hope, and hopefully they agree that it will allow them to hold people accountable who provide inaccurate information to them. All right. Moving on then to our new business on the agenda. It's another calculator styling issue that has arisen. This one not from the committee's work, from the subcommittee's work, but our juvenile court judges, lawyers, and staff in the dependency cases have asked us to create a calculator worksheet that can be used specifically in juvenile court cases. And of course, the case style would be the primary change, and that is the concept, which is somewhat self-explanatory. But Kurt, are you going to also explain what staff has been working on to try to accommodate this request, or Noel?
I'm gonna take this one.
All right, Noel.
Because I was sort of in the room when it happened, as they say. So, thank you for giving that background. As you were mentioning, this bubbled up to us from the juvenile court judges and practitioners. Commission staff gave a presentation on calculating child support and dependency cases at the Child Welfare Law Summit back in December of 2022. And that room was filled with juvenile court judges and attorneys. At the end of that session, a few people approached Kurt's predecessor, our former executive program manager, Elaine Johnson, about creating a case style for child support worksheets that match the way case styles are handled in juvenile court. And there is some precedent for this. We currently provide a special case style in DCSS cases. Latan is now sharing that on the screen. You can see it's subtle, but it gives that extra on behalf of terminology that's important to DCSS. So we basically said we'd look into what we could do for them. And so with that goal to modify the calculator to create an appropriate case style for juvenile court cases, Elaine's set to work. And I'll just go through briefly the process that Elaine developed. The first issue is what would trigger the calculator to create that special style? I was just mentioning that we currently do that for DCSS. And the case style is prompted by recognizing DCSS staff through their email address extension, which is dhs.ga.gov. With that information, we manually, and that's the royal we, it's Latana, on a weekly basis, updates the calculator to change the default setting of pro se, like pro se litigant, to DCSS staff. And that's the trigger that lets all of their worksheets then conform to this case style. Now here in juvenile court, in this setting, there is no standardized email for everybody involved in juvenile court. There's the judges, judicial staff, SAGs, child attorneys, parent attorneys, you name it. So thankfully, however, unlike DCSS, who sometimes appear in Superior Court, sometimes before OSA, perhaps even in other settings, everybody in juvenile court is always going to be in juvenile court. So if Latana, if you just click down to the next slide, you'll see we have the trigger for creating the new style being if somebody selects court name as juvenile, then this option, this is what will trigger the case styling. Okay. Okay, if you go on to the next slide, Tom. So this next slide shows us what the proposed new case style in juvenile court would look like. Again, it's fairly subtle, but Elaine in particular worked with one of our colleagues, Diana Johnson. She's a former pro tem juvenile court judge in DeKalb. She now is the director of the Juvenile Court Improvement Program in Georgia and staffs the Supreme Court's Committee on Justice for Children. We work closely with her, and she gave us a lot of guidance. And Elaine also talked to a handful of other judges and practitioners, and this was what they said their ideal case style would be. You see, it says, in the interest of, and the child's name, the sex, the date of birth. This is apparently what juvenile court, I'm not familiar with them, but case styles typically look like. If you go to the next slide down, this is what the proposed new calculator screen would look like when inputting a child. I'm so used to saying imputing, I'm just imputing instead of inputting a child to create a child support worksheet in juvenile court. It would now require those things. It would ask for their file number, their case number, which apparently, unbeknownst to me, were two different things. The full date of birth. We also, everything else in child support requires only year of birth, and we're really, really careful about that. But Diana was adamant that they always show the full date of birth. So we are going to change it in juvenile court, or proposing to change it.
And that is because their files are confidential and sealed and not accessible to the public in the same way the civil filings are.
Okay.
Got it.
So that is why I know it may cause everyone pause, because we know what the statute requires us to not do.
Right.
But this is different in juvenile court for certain. I think the only trouble that would come is if some pro se litigant, which we can't control necessarily,
So now-
attaches it or files it in a superior court action, then you've got some corrective action that a judge will have to take in superior court, but it would not affect the calculator itself or the creation issue or process, I should say.
Exactly. So that would be the updated screen for those folks. And so I just wanted to open it up. I mean, I can talk about the next steps from here, but I just wanted to entertain any questions or open up for discussion about either anything I've said thus far, or what the actual worksheet would look like, or what the actual calculator would look like.
Do any of the subcommittee members, I can't see right now whether you might be puzzled or raising your hand or looking like you want to chat about it. I will say only at this point while we're getting you back up on the screen that in terms of the format of it, I certainly don't see any problem with accommodating the request of allowing them to generate a new calculator. It seems like we probably should have done that a while back to help in that. There aren't all juvenile courts do not deal with child support regularly, but those that do have a need that I think is pretty clear to see. My only concern about this subcommittee and even the full commission acting on any particular design or anything else would be, I, for one, do not practice and have not practiced in juvenile court. I don't know about the subcommittee members, if they've got some comments about that aspect of things. We can certainly move forward with it for informational purposes, but what say you subcommittee members about doing this?
I like that formatting with the radio drop down to switch to juvenile and to have that style. I don't do a lot of juvenile court work, but that certainly is handy to then go ahead and have that style in there instead of trying to figure out how to get it in. And doing the full date of birth is helpful at times too.
And may I just offer that I was going to suggest, or as staff was going to suggest in general, as a next step would be we just wanted to get your blessing, full commission's blessing to move forward with this, but then to present it to CJC, the Council of Juvenile Court Judges, because Elaine worked extensively, but with only a very small subset of folks.
Right.
So definitely, and I don't want to just foist this on them. We're doing it to be helpful. And I'm assuming everybody's going to think this is helpful, but I thought perhaps the next step would then be to just clear it through the council to make sure they actually want that.
Offer it to them, yeah.
And I don't know if you think other folks like SAGs, parent attorneys, it's going to be more and more difficult to present it to parent attorneys or child attorneys because they're not organized around the central organization.
I mean, my feeling would be it's the juvenile court judges and their staff attorneys or staff that probably we would need to present this to. From a timing standpoint, that's not going to delay. It would not delay very, very long, the project, because the juvenile court judges spring meeting is the first weekend. Well, it's the first week following the first weekend in May. So I think that's the 6th, the 7th, and 8th. So there would be an opportunity to present that to them at that conference. And I don't think there is a SAG conference currently scheduled, and there's no organized meeting like we're contemplating for the parent attorneys. So I don't know about guardian ad litem training or anything that I suspect guardians ad litem do not get into the child support worksheet aspect of this in juvenile court. So imagine it's the judges. So
it could also be brought up at the Family Law Institute because there's a number of the family law attorneys who will also dabble in juvenile court too.
I think that's a great idea, and that is in June. That is in early June this year. They've moved it, I believe.
It's May 30th through June 2nd.
Yeah. So, so staff, you just want permission to present this to the full from us to present this to the full commission, is what you want. Does anyone see any problem with staff proceeding? All right. Good work on that. Now comes the time in our program where I'll just tell, did you want to go through the rest of it for just informational purposes, the rest of the PowerPoint?
As far as I'm done with my portion.
Yeah, that is it for this portion, for the juvenile
Did
portion
you want
of
to
this.
hold an official vote on that, though? This way we could say it was, a suggestion of a subcommittee. And
Sure.
not need seconds and all that at that meeting.
Sure, we certainly could do that. Do I hear a motion that the staff present this to the full commission?
I can make the motion that this be presented.
There's
Second.
a second. A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 All right, so unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, is the rest of the
The rest of it deals with
All
the
right.
calculator modernization.
we will leave them up here for just a moment so they can see me till we get to the next little blurb here. In the category of it's better to beg forgiveness than ask permission sometimes. In the interim, since our last meeting, an issue arose about having an opportunity to begin work on modernizing the calculator for the administrative office of the courts team to technical team to do some modernization work. So I took the initiative and requested that the full commission consider an e-vote for the redevelopment of the child support calculator system. Our commission chair, Judge Key, did authorize that e-vote, and it was sent out to the full commission on January 22nd, 2024. The commission members approved a system modernization with a favorable vote, and the official kickoff of the calculator modernization project occurred just this week, April 1st, 2024. So as they are available, we will give more updates. But for now, we are going to present the proposed streamline of the deviations in Schedule E. And Kurt's going to present, I think that's correct, right?
Yes.
Kurt, you're going to present just what's been done there. And I'll just lift this up that one of the reasons that I wanted to go ahead and lift this up to the full commission and skip the subcommittee process was because of the work that was being done on SB 454, the child support guidelines legislation. And I don't know if the three of you have had an opportunity to dive into that yet. The governor, of course, hasn't started signing bills yet, but it is SB 454. And that, along with a couple of other bills, relate to the child support practice. One doesn't affect the guidelines. That is SB 499, which, if the governor signs the bill, will implement a processing code for support the judge or jury to order support for an adult dependent child under certain circumstances. And so that's going to be quite a sea change, but it doesn't affect our work here together. The other bill affects if you do heavy income deduction order practice, and that was actually an agency bill that the Division of Child Support Services put forth, and that is SB 520. SB 520, and so that bill also affects the child support practice. So once you dive into SB 454, what you're going to see is there was a delayed effective date on proposed changes from the Child Support Commission itself to move the parenting time deviation to a mandatory adjustment and to move the low income deviation to a mandatory adjustment. And so by the looks on your faces, I can see that, as I suspected, perhaps a lot of practitioners were not following along during the legislative session about that, or even with the work that the Child Support Commission was doing for really about 2 years leading up to that, all as part of the discussion surrounding the mandatory review that we do for federal law by federal law every 4 years, right? Every 4 years the commission has to do. So I commend it to you to read, and I would love to have your input. I don't know what the full commission is going to do about publicizing the changes yet. I suspect that will be a topic of much conversation on April the 19th about what will be done over the next year, because there was a delayed effective date on those two sections of the bill. What there was not a delayed effective date on is the schedule of the basic child support obligation, which now will have a new name. Basic.
For this child support obligation table.
Yeah. So anyway, there's the table that we all know exists and takes up so many pages in the code that's just embedded in the calculator has now been updated based on inflation and other cost of living factors as part of that economic review. So it has been changed, and that will go into effect and be in the calculator July 1. And we may hear some more about that between now and then. The other change that is effective July 1 is that VA benefits, disability benefits, will be treated like Social Security benefits. It's the statutory provision is a mirror of that in terms of credits and how it operates against the monthly support award and so forth. So that is I would say it's a statutory codification of the Cold Claw case, if you've read that case, but it's not. It actually is a statutory overruling of the implicit holding in the Cold Claw case. But it is creating some consistency in the way those two disability benefits are treated. So that's a lot. That probably got your attention right out of the chute there. I say all that to say our deviations may have some changes this time next year that we're looking at, depending on what happens through the next legislative session. But with that, Kurt, if I now have everyone's attention for you to present this. Tell us about the proposed streamline of the deviations in Schedule E with regards to the calculator.
So as part of the calculator modernization project, the Judicial Council, Administrative Office of the Courts, IT developers, along with commission staff to an extent, do want to look at potential ways that the existing calculator, can be simplified, and also really kind of simplifying some of the existing instructions and screen presentation too. Now, probably a lot of people would agree that one of the more complicated and cumbersome sections of the calculator, of course, is Schedule E, where we're talking about deviations. Now, of course, the parenting time, and thank you for the lead-in, Regina, the parenting time deviation and the low income deviation will now be gone.
If it survives the next legislative session.
If it survives the next legislative, correct. But we're about a year and a half, almost 2 years out from that. So Schedule E will look a bit different. But one area in particular that we did kind of identify on Schedule E is 51A. And Latana, if you could pull that PowerPoint back up, and the next to last slide. So 51A, where a user adds specific and non-specific deviations. Y'all are probably all very familiar with this. Now, nowhere else, something that we looked at is nowhere else on the calculator does a user enter two different values. They enter a value for the proposed deviation amount, and then presumably when the case goes before the judge, or in some instances the jury, we also have the judicial discretion applied deviation amount. And the only place where that exists right now on the calculator is the low income deviation, but of course that is going away. Now for the extraordinary medical expenses, extraordinary educational expenses, and child rearing expenses, there's only one column. There's simply the deviation amount. There is no proposed deviation amount and then judicial discretion, applied deviation amount. There's just a deviation amount. And we would suggest during this modernization and during this kind of like rewrite of the calculator to bring that down and to kind of, in the spirit of uniformity and in the spirit of kind of simplification, bring it over to one column and make it consistent with the rest of Schedule E. Because the way it looks right now, might be a bit confusing, and it may not necessarily need to be. So that's just something that we're thinking about. There may be other kind of areas that we look at that may benefit from some more streamlining and some instructional clarification. I don't necessarily think that we would need a vote on this because we're not there yet.
Right.
I don't even think still have the exact contract for the modernization project yet, but they're working on it. But when, at subsequent meetings, we could bring forth, kind of a list of, requests or suggestions from IT to get the blessing of the CAD/CAL subcommittee.
I think that would be good, and sort of segueing to, when our next meeting is going to be. That I don't know how far along they'll be in that project of having just a comprehensive list, but I'm thinking that we need to try to schedule a meeting in June, right before the table would be effective sometime maybe in the middle of June, to make sure that the calculator is operational and that there are nothing that anybody's bumped into that's going to keep that new table from it being as seamless as it was suggested it would be, to just replace the tables, right?
Right.
However the technology works to do
and
that.
Yeah, they I actually did some testing on it this week with them in the OC testing environment. Because the calculator, it has the live version, but it also has the testing environment version of it. But they are getting there on it. They did not include the higher range table of the combined monthly gross income up to 40,000. That was part of the raw part. But it is in process.
So any questions from you all about what they're doing with the modernization project, or what the things that they are looking at, attempting to do, or for that matter, any of the changes that we're likely to see come July 1 on other parts of the calculator based on the VA disability benefit change? I guess there'll be a change on the front cover sheet. Isn't that where we have the Social Security, where you can subtract
The credit.
the Social Security credit?
So now that with this new change, adding VA disabilities, we will have another line
Correct.
on what we call the worksheet, the product of the calculator, the actual worksheet, the printed worksheet.
So any questions from the subcommittee for staff?
May I stoke just a little question myself?
Sure.
To try to get at what Kurt and I what really prompted his presentation, is that we think this is a bit of an anomaly, and we're wondering whether it's really needed. This whole what was proposed, what the actual judge granted or the jury granted. Kurt and I don't see the calculator as like the keeper of the record of what went back and forth. And it's just oddly in this one area. For instance, Kurt and I think, although I don't know, but we would imagine that what somebody earns as income may be a lot more argued back and forth, but that we don't have the calculator try to keep some record of what the parents said they earned and then what was found as the earnings. It's just inputted on Schedule A. And what is ever on Schedule A is taken to be what the judge found the income to be. So that's sort of what we were getting at. We could streamline the calculator, just put in the deviation amounts.
Well, so once upon a time, I think, and I'm really testing my memory here, and subcommittee can hop in. I think once upon a time, this same structure also applied to, it did apply for a good reason to the low income, the low income deviation.
Yes, it does.
Right.
So that may be where it came from a, just a structural standpoint. They may have just had to build it all into all of them, because there was the highlight of trying to get the judge, again, to bring back to the same discussions that led to the legislation about it being a mandatory adjustment. That's not a new debate and not a new discussion. That has been happening ever since the low income deviation came to be. So all sorts of changes were made on that, one of which I think was to highlight trying to get judges to actually consider it. And so I'm wondering if that's where this came from, that it was from that low income deviation discussion and wanted to highlight that the judge could and should consider it, to make it more obvious that the judge needed to consider the request. So, or that maybe that when Excel worksheets were presented, there was a place at one time for the judge to just click a box and accept. I'm showing my age. The low income deviation, to just click it and accept it. So, all right, from the subcommittee, any discussion or questions from staff?
So,
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
and so the judges never look at the worksheets. Like, they never ask me to submit it. They only look at the paper copies, basically everywhere I practice. And so, just in my experience, I don't think that would be something that would get used very often. Although in other places where judges take more of an active role in there, and I don't know, even just if there were like a box or a blank that could be checked, or something where the judge could check it on the printed, once you print the PDF of the final worksheet, where the judge could check and approve or something. But in terms of like sending over the worksheet to their staff attorney or anything like that, it's just not really something that happens in my experience. But
I agree. My judges don't use a computer on the bench, and they don't want it. Their staff attorneys don't do worksheets. So it's just not something they're going to sit and click through. I've got one judge who does them by hand on the bench, pulls out the table, does the whole worksheet right there while I've got my laptop to double check numbers. So having the judge's proposed thing doesn't really function. But I'm thrilled about this VA thing, because it's come up again several times in my practice lately.
I imagine it is applicable down there in your neck of the woods, Jackie.
Yes.
That's great. So what I'm hearing is maybe there is some room to pull it out, because it's either granted and it stays, like if say non-custodial, like in this little example Kurt had worked up, non-custodial parent requested a deviation. If it's in there and it remains in there, it's been granted.
Right.
If it's denied, it gets yanked out, and if the judge overrides the amount, it gets changed.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
all it is. There does not need to be what was originally proposed, what the thing was. There's just room for error in that, I think, with all of those numbers.
And room for confusion. I mean, you look at it and it's all these boxes and a lot of text, and it's a little bit confusing. Just have the one box enterable. But to what Noelle was saying, I mean, we brought this up. Probably one of the more contested areas probably is income, where they don't want to include overtime, or whatever it may be. But you don't have a record of prior proposals for what your gross income is. So if it's not there, then why is it here, kind of a thing. But yeah.
Well, we'll keep working on that, and staff will certainly keep working on that. The AOC developers will keep working on that, and hopefully we'll have a list of recommendations from this project in June when we meet. All right. Is there anything that staff I have forgotten to cover while we have this group with us?
Did you want to discuss possible dates, or we'll deal with that another time?
I think we'll just send an email around
Yeah.
with a couple of proposed dates in June for everybody to consider, and y'all will let us know if there's some we need to avoid because of vacations and so forth. Anything you all would like to bring up, or anything you'd like staff to take a look at, or for me to raise for the commission meeting on April 19th?
As a matter of just a ease factor, if I've got all my different worksheets that I've done, and for a certain case, I may do 5 or 7 different worksheets, depending on different scenarios. When I'm done with my case and I go to close them out, I have to archive each individual one. Is there a way to just take the case
Archive the case?
as a clean matter?
So like archive the folder versus archive each individual worksheet.
Yes.
That's a great suggestion.
I don't know off the top of my head because
Me neither.
Elaine was the absolute guru of the actual calculator functioning, but that's something we can look into. And if it's,
Right.
If it's not possible, then we can look about making it possible.
That would be helpful for the practitioners for sure.
Even a select.
Yes. Select
Oh.
all of them.
Yes, I like that, because if you were gonna delete something, yeah.
Got it.
There's gonna be a lot of, minor kind of convenience factor, add-ons that we hope to do. The password reset, 2-factor, authentication kind of a thing. If you need to reset a password, lot of potential fixes like that.
Okay, we will look into that for you.
Cool. Thank you.
Anything else, folks? All right, well, thanks for helping me get a quorum so we can move this forward, and tune in and let all your family law sections know about these changes. The 454, I tell you what, I'll have, just for everybody's ease of forwarding, I'll ask staff to send out the bill to this subcommittee. And just please go ahead and start forwarding it to the local sections so that everybody can see what's about to happen here next year, unless there are tweaks and things that need to be done, or unless there's a legislative revolt, which there was in 2005 and 2006 over something that had a delayed effective date. And we got a whole different set of guidelines. So I'm curious to see how all this will play itself out once everybody figures out what has now happened. So we shall see. All right. Well, good to see everybody. Thanks. And as always, call me if I can be of assistance to you. And I'm sure staff feels the same way.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Good to see you all. Good to meet you all.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Take care. Bye.